Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Macomb County Prosecutors. It's not a debate, it is a forum. We're coming to you tonight from the Sterling Heights Community Center. I want everyone to know that we are social distancing. We're 6 feet apart here and no audience. Hello, I'm Charlie Langton. This forum is divided into 3 parts. The candidates will give an opening statement, then they'll be asked questions, and they'll have a closing statement. Now, all the questions were submitted by various nonprofits and advocacy groups from Macomb County. So let's get right into this now. Lots were drawn before the forum to determine the speaking order. Let's start right now for an opening statement, 1 minute opening statement, Richard John Goodman. Richard.
Thank you, Charlie. Good evening. I'm Richard John Goodman, and I'm a Republican candidate for the office of Macomb County Prosecutor. Now, it's impossible for me to tell you everything you need to know about me in 1 minute, so let me tell you the most important thing. I was a prosecutor for 30 years. I started as an assistant prosecuting attorney with Macomb County in 1984. I served proudly as an assistant prosecutor for 30 years, retiring in 2014. During my service as an assistant prosecuting attorney, I prosecuted thousands of criminals. I handled roughly several hundred actual trials where I prosecuted in the trial courts in Macomb County, circuit court and district court. I prosecuted criminals. I also served in the appellate division, prosecuting criminals in the Michigan Court of Appeals and Michigan Supreme Court. During my 30 years as a prosecutor, I handled just about every phase of prosecution. So if you only remember one thing about me, remember Richard John Goodman. He's the guy that was a prosecutor.
All right, thank you. Next, Jody Switulski.
Good evening. My name is Jody Switulski, and I'm your candidate for Macomb County Prosecuting Attorney. As a former prosecuting attorney in Macomb County, I was hired by Cara Marlinga and a treatment court judge. I am uniquely qualified to serve as your prosecutor from day one. I have tried tough cases, and I have put criminals behind bars. I've also served as a victim advocate in a prosecuting attorney's office and a court administrator. I now practice law and work nationally to stem the tide of the opioid epidemic that has hit Macomb County in particular very hard. I also address mental health and issues of violence. I'm very grateful for your time and consideration this evening, and I welcome the opportunity to earn your support. Remember, experience and integrity matters. Vote Jody Switulski.
All right, thank you. Saima Khalil, you're next. Saima.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Saima Khalil, and I am a Democrat running for Macomb County Prosecutor. I am a lifelong resident of Macomb County. Macomb County is my home. I'm a litigation attorney, and I have served as a staff attorney at Legal Aid, where I have served the most vulnerable people in our community. I have provided legal service to seniors, to victims of violence, to individuals that suffer from mental health and from drug addiction issues and other substance abuse issues. I'm running on a platform that seeks to serve our community entirely as a whole. I am focused on decarceration, transparency, accountability, and having a robust conviction integrity unit. I am the only candidate here that represents to Macomb that I'm against and am opposed to establishment politicians in Macomb that have run this county into the ground. This is my hometown. I am present and I'm here to help my county move towards a time of healing and new leadership. And thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Mary Shanowski, you're next.
In 1992, you elected me to be your circuit judge, and there I sat for 24 years with honor and distinction. In 2016, after aggressive testing and interviewing, I moved on to live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, because the federal government gave me a job, or offered me a job, as an administrative law judge where I sat and heard Social Security disability cases. I came back to Macomb in 2016, where I have remained to take care, and I did take care of, unfortunately passed away, my brother who was diagnosed with terminal cancer. As your circuit judge, I can tell you that I was not part of the political administration or politics. I sat as an independent individual in every case that I ruled on based on the facts and the circumstances presented to me. I was never involved in any backdoor politics, and I made it clear that I never would be. And that is how I acquired my independence, of which I'm very proud of. I look forward to being your next prosecuting attorney. Justice will be doled out, just like I did as a circuit judge.
All right, all right, all right. Mary Shanowski, thank you so much. Next, Tom Rombach.
Hello, I'm Tom Rombach. I'm running because Macomb County deserves a prosecutor who is singularly focused on protecting the public. I restore public confidence in the leadership and integrity of the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. I want to lead Macomb into an era of legal reform for which I've been advocating at the local, state, and national levels. I've been elected by the lawyers and judges as state bar president and also president of this incredible Macomb County Bar Association. I've also been elected by Macomb County voters as charter commissioner, and I've served as a county commissioner and as a city prosecutor. Since 2015, I've been recognized by lawyers and judges as a Michigan super lawyer. Because of my qualifications, experience, and leadership, the former editor of the Macomb Daily, Ken Kish, wrote in their paper that I'm the most qualified candidate to be your next Macomb County prosecutor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Peter Lucido.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for hosting this. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I raised 3 children, and I'm homegrown in Macomb. I never left, nor have I ever moved into Macomb. I've always been here from the beginning, and I'm here to stay. In addition, I have the most education, licensing, and experience out of any of these other panelists. I have experience as a legislator serving in the state Senate. In addition, I had passed more bills than any other legislator, which made me the 2019 State Senator of the Year. In addition, I'm going to tell you about why I am running. It's because Macomb County's calling me back home. We need a public corruption and ethics committee within the prosecutor's office. No one that's been in the prosecutor's office has prosecuted public corruption. No one that sat on the bench has done anything to do about that. They had every right to go do it. I'm coming home to do a job, not get a job. And as a result, I'm going to be the most effective voice that this county has ever seen. I put laws for criminal justice reforms into place, and I intend to see them through here in Macomb County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that'll conclude the opening statement portion. Now, let's move on to questions. 45 seconds, each candidate will get a question, and we'll move on. First question, Jody Switolski. Could you explain how that there would not be a conflict of interest if your judge husband handled a criminal case brought by you as a prosecutor? And if the solution is to recuse your judge husband, how fair is that to other judges in Macomb County?
It's pretty simple. My husband is a family law judge, and the majority of cases, well over 99%, almost every single case that the prosecuting attorney's office would see, does not touch the family court. Right now, I'm a practicing family law attorney, and so both my husband and my brother-in-law have to disqualify in every single case that I bring before the case, and so it would actually be significantly reduced. There really is no conflict of interest whatsoever in that regard. And in many cases, whether there are other families or Servitos that have served as prosecuting attorneys, and we know there are very qualified judges on the bench who hail the name Servito, they just move it around and shift it. No conflict exists.
All right, thank you. Tom Rombach, as a defense attorney for many years, would you find it difficult to explain to your defendant client that the judge in the case is married to the prosecutor? Does it add to the perception, perhaps, that Macomb County, the prosecutor's office, is a good old boy system? Tom?
I think there's always a problem with perception. On the other hand, as Ms. Wachowski has pointed out, the fact is that we are run by rules of professional conduct, and that has to do with the conflict analysis. So it's not always easy being a criminal defense attorney, but you necessarily have to explain to your client exactly that the rules are being followed. And if the rules aren't being followed, then it's on me as his or her advocate to come forward and explicitly indicate to the judge that this is an instance of disqualification. For instance, with a child support collection that would come in front of a family law judge, then I don't believe it would be appropriate. On the other hand, I plan on winning this, and therefore I don't think that conflict would arise.
All right, thank you. All right, next question. Saima Khalil, are you worried that the public might want a Republican prosecutor since Eric Smith was a Democrat and now faces, although he's innocent now, charges of corruption?
If the public wants a Republican prosecutor, then that is a choice that the public will mistakenly make, and the entire community is going to suffer if that happens.
Okay. Mary Shanowski, Eric Smith accused of running a criminal enterprise since 2012. Do you think that others, perhaps not criminally charged, maybe knew about this enterprise and looked the other way? Essentially, what can you do to assure the people that you or your new administration would not be corrupt?
Well, I can't guarantee what other people are going to do, but I certainly am going to have a watchful eye on their activity. Anyone that is working for me is going to be accountable to me, because I am accountable to you, the public. And I want to make sure that I'm going to be representing you with honor and dignity. I don't know that people turned their eye. I don't know that that happened. There was talk, there were rumors, and certainly maybe something should have been done sooner. As your prosecutor, I can't stand and I will not stand for public corruption. And I would be the first person to bring charges. I wouldn't wait for the state to come in, and I wouldn't wait for the federal government to come in. I would walk right over and bring those charges. However, there would be a conflict if I were the prosecutor. I would also have to then engage a different county.
Okay, all right, thank you. Peter Lucido, in the past you have denied charges of sexual harassment, later stated that it was not your intent. Now, given your response, how can survivors of sexual assault, their families, or concerned community members trust that you would oversee the prosecution of sexual assault cases in Macomb County?
Charlie, like anything else, I know your wife is a judge in Oakland County, so it's a political process that you play in Lansing, and you know all about politics because your wife is in it. As a result, I brought with me today a business letter from the State Senate Business Office that indicate there has been no sexual harassment of any type, and as a result, this was all politics from the beginning. Victims that deal with not only the Care House but also Turning Point, they can rest assured that those resources are going to be 100% in play all the time, every time, on the Lucido administration and the prosecutor's office. We deserve to have victims heard. We deserve to also have fair and equal justice. This wasn't justice up in Lansing, and as a result, that's why I'm here to talk about it and tell the story. Thank you.
All right. Richard John Goodman, are you and should the public be satisfied in your opponent's response to the alleged sexual harassment allegation? Is it sufficient? Or should we stop talking about Lucido and this sexual harassment allegation?
My response would be put up or shut up. If you have the evidence, come forward with it. If not, it's an over story. The story's over. As far as any type of sexual harassment, all you have to do is look at my reputation as a prosecutor. I've tried sexual assault cases. I've handled sexual assault on appeal. I went 100% on every case. Anytime a victim was sexually assaulted, they knew that I had their back, that I was going to go 100% for them.
All right, thank you. Tom Rombach. Not wearing a mask in Macomb County inside various places is a crime under the governor's executive order, yet I am not aware of any prosecutions. Would you prosecute those who violate the governor's executive orders?
I would have to consider that being in context, simply because the prosecutor wields an incredible amount of discretion. And if we're to prosecute every single faux pas in society, then it's simply going to be unlimited power, and that's subject to abuse. Again, if there's a number of complaints and if there's repeat offenders, then I think we have to step in, particularly with an establishment that is allowing that to happen on an ongoing basis. So I'm more focused on the institutions and their violations than I am on any individual that may be violating. And that would be my guiding principle. But I'd like to take each individual case on its individual merits.
All right. Mary Shanowski, a similar question. Would you prosecute those who violate the governor's orders, especially for not wearing masks and even gyms that continue to operate in this county?
As a prosecuting attorney, I would be charged with being the official making the decisions as to who should be prosecuted. If there is an order, if there is a law in place, I am obligated to follow that order or that law. And yes.
Okay. Jody Switowski, would more aggressive prosecution of the governor's orders help stop or slow down the spread of COVID-19?
First of all, similar to what the other candidates have said, it's really about what is in the interest of justice. Certainly, there has been a test to that, and the constitutional test has been upheld. It is valid to prosecute individuals for this. We are going to look at every single case with individuality and, again, go back to the interest of justice. I just want to respond to what Mr. Lucido said. However, when he held up his bill, they sanctioned Mr. Lucido for sexual harassment. They ordered him to take a class. They stripped him of a chairmanship. And there are several other women who also came out and said that he sexually harassed them. That is not, in fact, politics from the beginning. This is a man who was on a website denigrating women. And so let's be very clear about what happened.
Hold on. Because I brought proof here today.
Let me just go right down the line.
Evidently, this candidate didn't
hold
bring
on,
any
hold
proof.
on.
Here's
I'm going to go
the proof
right
from the
down the
state
line.
business office.
But the next question, though, Peter Lucido, it is to you. It's about violating the governor's orders. You can answer whatever you'd like, but would you prosecute those who violate governor's orders? Gyms, wearing masks, etc.
The case right now, because right now it's in the court, whether or not she has the power to put all these executive orders into place to go ahead and make people do things that may be unconstitutional. But until there's been a ruling by a judge, there is law that supports right now the governor's order. The order has to be looked at in light most favorable to seeing whether or not the elements of the crime were met. What are the elements of a crime? Is it just not wearing a mask? What part of the society do we not wear it in? If there's a published post that says, as we did tonight, come in here, we brought our masks. If it says you must come into the store without, or into this facility without or with a mask, you have the right to say, I don't want to go in. But if you're violating the law, you must uphold the law.
All right. Saima Khalil, different question. Requiring cash bonds from indigent people to be released pre-trial, some say, criminalizes poverty and puts an unnecessary burden on poorer people who could lose their jobs or housing even after a few days in jail. Do you support reforming the cash bail system?
100%. I think the Michigan Joint Task Force report on incarceration and jail that came out in January 2020 supports this. And I think we need to recognize absolutely that placing a cash bond on someone who is indigent is destabilizing so many aspects of an indigent person's life. That person is going to experience housing issues, that we are already as taxpayers going to be supporting them housed in a jail. We're going to end up supporting now their family who's going to experience a loss of income coming into that home. They're probably going to turn to the state for cash benefits, for food assistance. So me as a taxpayer, I'm going to be paying for the family 100%, whether that person's in jail and then other family members that are inside a household. I absolutely support reform.
All right. Richard John Goodman, same question. Pretrial, bond, your thoughts on the system?
I think that the number one is that anybody that cannot post a bond, is a cash bond is required. Anybody that cannot post that bond should be immediately screened to determine what is the appropriate level of bond. There's a process now, they have community corrections, but the problem is that first you have to go to the court, have the bond set, then go to jail, then get an attorney, and several days, maybe a week or two later, then the attorney says, can we refer this to community corrections to have the bond reviewed? And in many cases, the bond is lowered. The problem is that it takes several weeks. There's no reason for a defendant charged with something like a retail fraud first degree to sit in a jail for 2 weeks.
All right, thank you. Jody Switowski, same question, pretrial, bail.
I mean, obviously, I support the pretrial bail and bond reform. Certainly, as a judge, that was a consideration that we had to make when nonviolent offenders are being incarcerated for long periods of time. It certainly is prejudicial against people of low socioeconomic status, poverty. There's racial discrimination in that regard as well. And so we have to take a look at all of those things. There is a place for high bonds, and that's for violent criminal offenders. There are also accountabilities that can be put into place as we screen and we assess individuals for alternatives to incarceration methods. We can use bondsmen's, tethers, hold them accountable in other ways that doesn't require that they remain in custody. I think that's very appropriate.
All right. Peter Lucido, same question, reforming cash bail system?
Yeah, we have delved into all of these ideas up at the state capitol, and I'm proud to say that I support jail reform as well as, because we don't want to keep people in jail that have mental health issues and or have substance abuse issues. But we want to hold accountable who it is that we protect, and that's the public. Individually, I'd like to have what's called a rocket docket. If it's a low-level crime, non-offensive to the community, let's get them through the system and don't hold them for economics. Why? You're stigmatizing the poor, the rich get to get out, and therefore you have a disproportionate injustice. As a result, I believe in a system that's fair, equitable, and swift. Thank you.
All right. Mary Shanowski, a little different type of question here, but do you feel that the prosecutor's office currently has an advantage, more resources, for example, over indigent criminal defendants or those who have a court-appointed lawyer?
It's always been a problem in our county, in our state, in our country. Certainly the prosecutor has all the resources that the government has to offer, and we need to do something, and we've taken steps in Macomb County to have a public defender's office, one that will give them more resources, access to expert witnesses, the ability to get evidence quicker. I want to relate, though, to the reform. Our entire criminal justice system needs reform. Our system is not at all advantageous to an indigent individual. Our system sets up a person for failure. When people walked out of my court because of statutory obligations, I was forced to fine them, and they would walk out with dues owing in excess of $2,000. It sets people up for failure.
All right, thank you. All right, Tom Rombach, a little bit different. There's a syringe exchange program being talked about in Macomb County. Do you think that that is a valuable tool to fight the opioid epidemic? And what can the prosecutor do to assist in that?
Yeah, I think a syringe exchange program is a valuable tool because right now we're punishing a whole lot of folks that have substance abuse problems and mental health issues. And that's disproportionate in our jail system and in our prison system. And any tool that we can use to fight that, I think, is a valuable tool. And people don't understand as well is that there's actually an immunity standard already in place in our statute that says if you call in during a mere possession of a drug crime, then you have a Good Samaritan immunity to prosecution there. And that's been being fought right now by the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office because they don't believe that that should be the law. And again, as a prosecutor, my job is to use sane discretion.
All right, thank you. Pete Lucido, same question. A syringe exchange program, are you okay with that? Is that a valuable tool to fight the opioid epidemic?
It's not only a tool, but there's necessary evils in doing anything that is not just and right. I believe that a system that goes ahead and gives opportunities for people that have made mistakes in life to redress their wrongs is the most important thing that can possibly happen. I believe that the legislature needs to put in implementation and funding to go along with it to go ahead and make sure that those that are on the streets, those that do not have the wherefore be brought in and taken care of. And as a result, call it soft on individuals that can't take care of themselves. Call it smart justice, which means you have an opportunity to make the wrongs right before the wrongs happen.
All right. Mary Shanowski, same question.
I'm sorry.
A syringe exchange program, how valuable a tool is it to fight the opioid epidemic?
Any tool is a valuable tool, but education is the most valuable tool. Educating people as to addiction, having an understanding of what addiction is, getting to the youngsters and teaching them about, drugs and how it affects their lives. We need more. We need more people out there educating our youth. We need more with addiction education.
All right. And Jody Switolski, same question.
Obviously, as a nationally recognized expert on the opioid epidemic, last year I spoke to about 20,000 students on the issues of prevention and education. I've also integrated systems between law enforcement, prosecutors' offices, and the court systems, setting up treatment courts and early intervention strategies. Some of those most conservative communities in our country have found and have been engaging in needle exchange programs for years, and they've been proven to be tremendously successful, because what we haven't heard is that substance use disorder, opioid use disorder, is a disease that is recognized by the American Medical Association and other organizations. The prosecutor is instrumental in early intervention education and setting up a pathway to recovery through the criminal justice system.
All right, thank you. Richard John Goodman, same question.
I thank you. I think it's like putting a Band-Aid on a compound fracture. I think what we need is a total program that treats people, more use of the drug courts, more use of programs, because addiction is a whole thing. It's not just getting your drug. It's a whole way of life. We need more programs like the drug court program. We need more programs like a Live Right. I work a lot with the Live Right people. I go out there as an attorney and advise them on legal matters. That type of program treats the whole person and not just whether or not they have a clean needle.
All right. And Saima Khalil, same question.
Thank you so much. So definitely, I think it's a great tool, but it's a starting point. So many defendants that come through our criminal justice system suffer from addiction issue, and addressing substance abuse issues head-on is a top priority for the prosecutor's office. Addiction issues are a health issue, but I also support getting greater resources over to someone who is experiencing these issues, in particular supporting rehabilitation programs and wraparound services for these types of people.
All right, this is a similar question. Assignment will also give it to you. What criteria, if any, would you use to support dropping criminal charges if a defendant agreed to participate and is successful in a rehabilitation program? This is really a specialty court type question. Saima?
So what type of criteria would I be looking for?
Sure.
So first and foremost, I would be looking for the defendant to be actively engaged with the process. So if there's some type of a social worker or a staff person that they are reporting to, I would want to see the defendant complying to the best of their ability. Now, oftentimes, from my understanding of looking at the bipartisan report, a lot of people that come through our system, they are at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. So they are going to suffer from housing issue, employment issue, but I would want to see this person be successful. So the goal would be not to frustrate that process, but to continue to provide supportive services, watch them comply, and continue to encourage.
All right, thank you. Richard John Goodman, same question, specialty courts, again, dropping criminal charges if those people were to participate and be successful in a rehabilitation type program. Are you in favor of that?
Well, number one, the plea bargaining procedure and system in Macomb County is a joke. It has to be changed. Many people, plea bargaining is done behind closed doors. A lot of people are left with wondering whether or not the defendant got a deal because his attorney donated money to the prosecutor's campaign. I would definitely, number one, look at the nature of the charge. If it's a violent crime, I don't think drug rehabilitation is going to do the trick, and certainly we're not going to, my administration would not reduce a violent crime based upon completing a drug program. Now, if the crime has to deal with drugs, number one, that's going to be the way to go.
All right, thank you. Peter Lucido, same question. Specialty courts, rehab programs?
Yeah, I feel the same way. If you got a violent crime, you got to go ahead and assess the risk of the society that you're supposed to ensure protection of. That's what you're voted in for. In addition, we've spent way too much money housing opioid addicted individuals, substance abuse users. We throw them in jail, and what are they getting? They're not getting any treatment. They're not getting any type of counseling, and they're not doing what they need to do to rehabilitate their lives and go on with their lives when they come out. So sometimes when you've got just an addicted individual coming before the court that's using drugs that are illegal, you need those type of tools to have in the prosecutor's office You need the grant programs that the state offers to make it readily available to have those counselors on standby, as well as the judges, to be actively involved with the specialty courts, including mental health, veterans, as well as opioid, as well as drug courts.
All right. Jody Switalski, different question. Have Macomb County prosecutors in the past not been aggressive enough in prosecuting those that pollute Macomb County? Or does the environmental prosecution need to be strengthened?
It absolutely needs to be strengthened. As the daughter of a biologist, specifically an ornithologist, for his entire life, I've grown up learning about the environment, respecting the environment, understanding how symbiotic our relationship is with the environment. We live in beautiful Macomb County. We've got to preserve our lakes. We've got to preserve the waterways, our trees. We have just a token environmental unit that doesn't function in the prosecuting attorney's office, like, frankly, many other units in the prosecuting attorney's office under our former prosecutor's tenure. So yes, one of my first goals will be to expand the environmental unit, the senior crimes unit. We will expand victims' rights and protect children. But absolutely, I look forward to working, Ms. Miller, in protecting our environment.
All right. Mary Shanowski, same question, environment?
I find it really disheartening when I ride my bike every day, 12 miles to the beach, and I ride around, and the beach is closed. We live right at St. Clair, at Lake St. Clair. What a beautiful beach. We have nobody who is willing to prosecute the polluters, and I don't understand that. We have Candace Miller, an awesome, awesome person who is trying to fight this dilemma with the waste that is being thrown into our lakes. But nobody is prosecuting. Why? I don't understand why. And yes, Ms. Switalski is correct. We have nobody in the prosecutor's office designated and knowledgeable with respect to environmental crimes. We absolutely need a unit that will deal with these environmental crimes.
All right. Simon, same question, the environment, and where is, if there's a failure in the current office, where is it?
I mean, the current office has experienced a lot of failures in general, so there's a lot of cleanup work to do. So I wholeheartedly support a division of the prosecutor's office that is dedicated to environmental protection. If we don't protect our environment, the air, the water, the land around us, we are all at risk of harm. Why people are not being prosecuted tells me a lot about establishment politics in Macomb County, which is really unfortunate.
Richard John, same question about the environment. What needs to be done, if anything, to clean up Macomb County? What can you do about it?
Well, I was born and raised in Macomb County. It's a great place to live. I love it. Anybody that would pollute our environment here in Macomb County deserves to be prosecuted, and I would prosecute them. I think that we did have an environmental prosecutor in the prosecutor's office for a couple decades. And I don't think they prosecuted anything. I have a feeling, a reason to believe that that was because the people that they were looking to prosecute it were donating to the prosecutor's campaign.
Pete Lucido, same question about the environment. And again, is there a failure? If there is a failure, what about budgeting for this environmental prosecutor?
Yeah, there's not only a failure, but the people that were in the prosecutor's office that are on this panel tonight, clearly you can see that they had a duty to do something and they didn't. They failed you. I will say this, there's been a special prosecutor in the environmental that has done absolutely nothing for illegal dumping into the Clinton River as well as Lake St. Clair. In addition, the environmental prosecutor is charged with a duty of doing exactly what they're supposed to do, protecting the environment. That is one of the duties of the environmental prosecutor. It's great that they go out and prosecute people that didn't get fishing licenses, but what has it done to society itself? Cost us all more money, time, and energy. You damn right I will have environmental prosecutions for all of those that are doing illegal acts in this county, because it's a waste of taxpayers' money to spend more.
All right. Tom Rombach, same question on the environment. Where's the problem? Is this current prosecutor, or prosecutors in the past, have they done enough to clean up Macomb County?
The answer is simply absolutely not. I'm in concurrence. The prosecutor under Carl Marlinga actually had an environmental protection unit that was going after polluters, those that desecrate our air, desecrate our water, and desecrate our soil, and those that were paving over wetlands one of our most valuable commodities to keep our lakes and our rivers and our entire Clinton River Basin clean. And instead, we lost the political will to go forward with that. And people can speculate, but it's either there or it isn't. And as prosecutor, I'm definitely going to reinstitute that. I was there when Robert Kennedy Jr. came in for river keepers and tried to instill that ethos, and I volunteered to be a private practice lawyer doing that. I'm not going to stop now.
All right. Thank you. Richard John Goodman, how much reliance would you put on evidence gathered by facial recognition technology?
Oh, I would not place a lot of reliance on it. It's a good start, definitely, but you'd have to have a lot more evidence. From what I know about facial recognition is that there are a lot of errors that can be made. And to rely on an cross-examinable piece of evidence, I wouldn't use that as the sole basis for prosecution.
All right. Saima Khalil, same kind of question. Do you think facial recognition technology, some say it's racist, or is it a useful tool in obtaining leads?
No, I don't think we're at that point where we can rely on facial recognition technology. I'm hopeful that everyone has seen the case that came out of Wayne County where a person was misidentified, and it was a black person that was misidentified. So whatever we know about facial recognition technology right now, it could definitely result in issues where we are charging wrong people with crimes and whatnot. It's not a time to use this.
Tom Rombach, same question. Facial recognition technology, is it a useful tool? Could it be a useful tool? Would you ever use it as a prosecutor?
I think in the current state of the technology right now, I would deter the use of facial recognition technology simply because it has such a huge bias, particularly against minorities. It's like everything else, that a Caucasian system set up by Caucasians is going to be best for Caucasians. And until that technology can improve and can demonstrably be shown scientifically to be accurate, we simply can't be running around using half measures and saying as if these are admissible going forward in court or elsewhere to give the police leads. Just the same reason that our polygraph examiners aren't allowed to testify in a courtroom, neither should facial recognition be used in that manner.
Peter Lucido, the same question.
Yeah, I have a bill right now to ban facial recognition, and the reason why I have it is exactly why the police officers that bring in individuals, it's technologically unreliable. It's a tool, yes, but if it's the only tool to bring somebody in for questioning, we have to look back and saying whether or not we're doing the best we can for society we serve. You know, victims, they have to be heard, but also the individuals that are law-abiding citizens ripped in and put into a jail cell for questioning based on facial recognition alone is not serving the public and is doing an injustice rather than a justice. I have a bill that says we're going to ban facial recognition until we get it right, just like we should ban anything else that's not right in the criminal justice system where we need equity and fairness, and fundamental fairness is what I'm all about.
Mary Shanowski, would you bring criminal charges if the victim in a domestic violence case doesn't want to testify, yet you do have other evidence to convict? Some people call this the concept of victimless prosecution.
Well, I think we as a society have to understand that the prosecuting attorney represents not just that victim. The prosecuting attorney represents all of the state of Michigan. So for whatever reason, a domestic violent victim does not want to testify, it's not enough always for me to say as a prosecutor that I'm not going to continue with prosecution if I have other evidence. I am charged with the duty of representing the state of Michigan, not just one individual. I will listen to that victim. I will be mindful of the fact that maybe the victim is being pressured into not testifying, which often happens. I am all about looking and establishing a domestic violence court. I believe this county lacks that, and I believe our county needs to implement a domestic violence court focusing on families.
Jody Switolski, same question about victimless crime. If the victim does not want to testify, would you still bring charges?
I have prosecuted cases of domestic violence using victimless prosecution. I have co-written legislation on behalf of victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, registered myself as an unpaid lobbyist, and got it passed into law. I have volunteered and served as a victim advocate in a prosecuting attorney's office. I have sat as a judge and presided over a domestic violence court. I have held a woman's hand who was beaten and battered and sexually abused. We will absolutely move forward. We will work with law enforcement because I have trained law enforcement how to engage in victimless prosecutions so they can gather the evidence so we can move forward without all of that trauma, re-victimization on the complainant victim.
Simon, same question to you. Go ahead.
Sure. I have done a lot of work with victims of domestic violence, and it's not uncommon for a victim to want to say that they don't want to prosecute the batterer. And it's very important for the prosecutor to understand and take seriously what the victim is saying. I would certainly take it into consideration, but it is definitely a case-by-case basis, because what's also important is what the defendant's history is. So without knowing specific facts, what I will say is I definitely would hear out what the victim has to say. I would definitely consider it, but it's a totality of the circumstances situation. I need to know exactly what's going on and why the victim doesn't want to proceed.
Tom Rombach, same question again, victimless prosecution. Would you bring charges against the defendant when often in a situation of being a battered assault, but the victim decides, I don't want to prosecute, but you have other evidence to convict?
I think we have to be most mindful that there are cycles to domestic violence, where there's domestic violence, and then there's a period where the couple may make up, and then the violence simply escalates. That became most mindful during the O.J. Simpson prosecution, and at that time, the department that I helped lead, Hazel Park Prosecutor, we were one of the first to institute that 20-hour cooling-off period. So the fact is that I would proceed and not let the victim be dispositive. On the other hand, I wouldn't proceed with just hopeful evidence. I still have to muster beyond a reasonable doubt, and I can't simply put somebody on trial in the hopes that something might show up, because that's persecuting somebody and not prosecuting somebody. So there has to be a fair modicum of evidence to move forward where I can meet the burden of proof.
All right, thank you. Richard, same question to you. You've been a prosecutor for a long time. Would you do that? Have you done it?
Yes, I would. As a general rule, I would prosecute a domestic violence case, even if the victim says that they don't want to proceed with prosecution. The number one thing is that you have to get in there. You cannot address the situation and help the people unless you charge them. As a prosecutor, you can't help somebody if they haven't been charged. You have no authority to do so. So I would definitely prosecute them. Now, what happens after that depends upon a number of factors, but number one, as Mr. Rombach said, it removes the perpetrator from the situation, gives them an opportunity to cool off, and maybe in a week or so things will be different. You can address the problem perhaps with a diversion program. Maybe there are other programs that would help the situation rather than sending them to jail.
All right. Pilosito, same question.
I've had the experience in the courtroom to have those same victims talk to their significant others and say the same thing. It is on a case-by-case basis. You can't just generalize like you just did on every domestic violence, whether or not they're going to prosecute or not. You have a duty as a prosecutor to bring charges when you can make the elements of the crime and when you can move forward with the evidence that's presented by the police department. If the department comes in and says, this looks like a shove or it looks like an unintentional act, we have a duty as prosecutors to make a call. That call is going to be based on the totality of the circumstances, which means on a case-by-case basis, the evidence that's presented, and most importantly, look at the past history of the individuals, because you just don't rush to justice.
All right. Richard John Goodman, what's your position on allowing assistant prosecutors to plea bargain cases? Or will you have set policies that must be reviewed by higher-ups?
Oh, certainly there are going to be guidelines, absolutely. Like I said before, the current prosecutor, the former prosecutor, he campaigned as one tough prosecutor, saying, well, we're tough on crime, we don't plea bargain. But in fact, they did plea bargain. It was just done behind closed doors, and you didn't get any indication of why your client, why the defendant got a plea reduction or didn't get a plea reduction. I would have everything open and transparent. It would all be spelled out. Certainly, we would start with the type of crime, the nature of the crime. Is it a violent crime? What was the defendant's intent? What does the victim think about any type of reduction? Was there a weapon used? There's many, many factors that go into a plea bargain. But yes, my assistants would be allowed to plead.
Okay. Tom Rombach, same question.
Yes, the assistant prosecutor would be able to plea bargain a case, again, under certain guidelines. The ultimate goal here is to do justice. It's not to reelect a prosecutor to play politics or for personal gain. And it does have to be a transparent system where there are guidelines and those decisions can be made within those guidelines. And if those guidelines can't see fit to do justice in an individual case, because that's what our goal is you should be able to meet face to face with somebody with greater authority in a supervisory capacity so that they can weigh the relative merits of the case and see if the evaluation is different at that level, rather than submit some level to a letter to somebody on high and get a word back without having any idea of why or what advocacy works or doesn't work.
All right. Jody Switowski, with scarce resources, would you support part of the prosecutor's budget to be devoted to providing translators for non-English speaking criminal defendants?
Well, the responsibility of providing translators for criminal defendants falls upon the court. So that budgetary item should not fall into the prosecuting attorney's office. However, there are already line items that exist for when you're interviewing a witness, a complainant, a victim in a case that allows and provides for that. Obviously, if we're going to seek justice, we've got to make sure that there's comprehension, education. We live in a very diverse county, and we want to make sure that everyone has equal access to justice, and that means understanding and discerning exactly our position. So it already exists. We would ensure that that's available to every individual that where English is not their native tongue.
Mary Shanowski, same questions about providing resources to non-English speaking criminal defendants?
Well, it's not only non-English speaking, it's also sign language. I mean, that's another form of communicating with people that's essential. Everyone has a right to understand what goes on in a courtroom. Everyone has a right to understand the proceedings. It is vital that there are interpreters so that they can interpret to every criminal and to every witness what is essential and what is not essential. I would find a way, if I could, I would go back to the county executive and say, listen, I have to do this or else I can't seek justice. And my goal is to be fair, to let everyone have an awareness of what goes on in the courtroom. So the money would be found. It's just a matter of where it would be taken from.
Pete Lucido, are there enough people of color who are prosecutors? And if not, what would you do to improve it? Or is it okay?
No, it's not okay. In fact, people of color have been discriminated in the criminal justice system. That's why I went to Lansing to do criminal justice reforms. People of color get more time. People of color has less resources. These are not my words. These are the words of the people that did the research. At the end of the day, if you don't have prosecutors of people of color, then what kind of prosecutorial office do you have? An unfair one. It's not fundamental fairness at all. I also believe juries ought to be engaged with people of color. Why? How do you have fundamental fairness if you don't have people of color judging you, your own peers? At the end of the day, I believe a prosecutor's office needs a overall as it relates to the ethnicity as well as the individuals of color.
All right, Saima, Khalil, same question. Are there enough people of color who are prosecutors?
Nope. I think I am familiar with probably 3 people of color from the prosecutor's office. I suppose there could be more, but I'm mostly in 16th Circuit, so that's all that I've seen. In general, the legal community in Macomb County is not very diverse, and I don't think that leadership in Macomb or influencers have done much about it.
Richard John Goodman, the same question, people of color, and if there's not enough, what can you as a prosecutor do about it?
In my opinion, no, there's not enough. And I think as a prosecutor, I would definitely encourage to hire minorities. I think a diverse prosecutor's office is important. Every person brings their own particular background and knowledge to the situation. And if you don't have a diverse workforce within the prosecutor's office, those views are not brought forward.
Tom Rombach, same question.
I don't believe that there's enough diversity in the prosecutor's office, and that goes certainly racially. I think it also goes to women. And I think one of the reasons that there's not exceptional retention of these folks because they either can't achieve leadership positions or they don't have sufficient mentoring or career opportunities within the office, and therefore they may be hired with the best of intentions, but without maintaining a career path, they can't establish a foothold and then make a career in the prosecutor's office. And under my leadership, that would certainly change. We've made significant strides at the state bar, and we've tried to make steps at the Macomb County Bar, and that's what I would be about in that position.
Okay. Jody Spitzelski, same question.
Obviously, we need greater diversity within the prosecuting attorney's office and other government establishments. Not just diversity of color, race, ethnicity, religion, ability to speak, as Judge Chernowski indicated, for people that are hearing impaired. We also need to have more Macomb County representatives in the prosecuting attorney's office. I agree. Let's make Macomb our home. Why are we hiring so many out-county individuals when there are so many skilled and gifted attorneys right here in Macomb of varying races and ethnicities and, again, religions? Let's make the office representative of our communities.
Mary Chernowski, same question.
The hiring practices in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office have never been fair. They've been based upon how much money was donated. If your daddy donated a lot of money, you might get a job as an assistant prosecutor. There are 4 black assistant prosecutors, and 1 was banished, and 1 has suffered, and he worked for me, and he was a very good prosecutor because he wasn't following the establishment's rules. That all needs to change. Hiring practices need to change. The way people are brought in, we need to look at all ethnic groups. We need to diversify our prosecutor's office, and we need to be fair in our hiring processes, and our hiring processes should not include how much money is donated to a political campaign.
All right, last question here. We're going to go down the line. 15-second answer. Tom Rombach, you just got elected prosecutor. Congratulations. 15 seconds. Number 1 priority.
I think we have to establish leadership and integrity, particularly the public's perception there. As we pointed out throughout the course of this debate, that's sorely lacking right now.
All right. Sima.
Transparency board. I need defense attorneys and the public at this board. It's going to be a monthly meeting. Everyone's going to come to the table, and we are going to put the pressure on the prosecutor's office to be more public and more transparent.
Mary Chernowski.
We need everybody to get along. We need a prosecutor's office that has a rapport with the bench, with the defense attorneys, with the assistants, and with the public in general. We've never had that in our prior administrations. There was never a rapport with the bench. Richard John Goodman.
Redo the plea bargaining system with input from everybody, prosecutors, judges, and defense attorneys.
Pete Lucido.
We got great prosecutors that are in the office. We need to strengthen, number 1, the morale by having a public corruption and ethics board. Everybody should have one throughout the entire county.
Jody Spitzelski.
Do what you say you're going to do. An integrity unit with transparency and dashboards while educating our current very skilled prosecuting attorneys.
All right, that will conclude the question part of the forum. Now, lots were drawn before the forum started to determine the speaking order in the closing. Let's do 30-second closing. We'll start with Richard John Goodman.
Thank you again, Charlie. Again, I was a prosecutor for 30 years. I was not part of Eric Smith's inner circle. I didn't have control of forfeiture funds. I was never advised of what was being done with the forfeiture funds. And I can verify, Ms. Switolski and Judge Sherdowski, they were not in a position to know what was going on with those funds either. First of all, you have to have a prosecutor that's honest and willing to take on corruption. And you have to remember, it's good to have a diverse background if you want to be a judge or be a state senator. If you want a prosecutor, elect a prosecutor.
All right, thank you. Richard John Goodman. All right, Jody Switolski.
The number one job of any prosecutor is to be tough on crime. But Macomb needs someone who can not only tackle violent crime, but who can give special care to victims, who is experienced and ready on day one to fight against senior crimes, protect our children, hate crimes, and more. An individual with proven integrity and, above all, fairness, which means that you don't just prosecute, you seek justice. I have done this with great success, and I will do it again. Macomb deserves no less. Vote Jody Switolski.
Thank you, Jody Switolski. Saima Khalil.
Thank you. Macomb County has corrupt public officials, and the only way things are going to change in Macomb is if the voters elect someone that is not tied to big money, not tied to establishment politics. Macomb needs an entirely new face, and Macomb needs an attorney or a prosecutor that supports criminal justice reform.
All right, thank you, Saima Khalil. Mary Shanowski.
Your next prosecutor needs to be hardworking, honest, and accountable. All of these folks here, they're all nice people, all of the candidates that I sit with. All nice people, all educated people, smart too. Your next prosecutor should be me. I have 24 years of experience as a circuit court judge, 24 years of litigation, criminal litigation experience, and 24 years of accountability to you, the citizens of Macomb County. You elected me 4 times because you trusted me, and I am forever indebted to you for that. And now I'm asking, please elect me for the 5th time to be your next prosecutor.
Mary Shanowski, thank you. Tom Rombach.
With over 32 years of courtroom success, I've been honored to lead the legal profession and Macomb County. I'm running for prosecutor to put my track record as a tough, experienced leader to work for Macomb County residents. I'll pursue justice, not politics, not personal gain. I'm more than a political name. I am a strong, independent voice, a voice for change. For more information, check out my website, tomrombach.com. I hope to earn your vote as the next prosecuting attorney. Vote for Tom Rombach, Democrat. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Rombach. Peter Lucido.
You know, I'm not apologizing for being the passionate person I am in caring for this county. I've lived here all my life. I've raised my family. And after 35 years ago, coming into a criminal justice, first class in law school, the professor said we should have the prosecutor at the utmost integrity, honesty, truthfulness, as well as ethics. At the end of the day, it's tragic what happened with Eric Smith, our former prosecutor. As a result of him resigning, I'm being called home to Macomb to do the work that was necessary to do when all these other individuals were in the office. I'll be one tough prosecutor, but I'll be a fair prosecutor.
All right, Pete Lucido, thanks so much. Well, that will conclude the forum. Some very good candidates here. You must vote now on August 4th. Remember, you can only vote all Democrat or all Republican, of course, one candidate in that category for prosecutor. There are a lot of other issues on the ballot as well. Thank you, Rick Troy from the Macomb County Bar Association, for being our timekeeper. Thank you to all of the nonprofits and specialty groups within the county for providing the questions. And thank you for watching and tuning in. There will be other repeat versions of this. Check the Macomb County Bar website for the details. From all of us here, I'm Charlie Langton. Thank you so much. Good night.